Good evening. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. In attendance are the members of the Biennial Audits Oversight Commission, including Deputy Comptroller Erica McClammy, representing Comptroller Bill Henry. Thank you for joining us. I see Councilman Ryan Dorsey. I see sir, run your name one more time. I apologize.
Richard Mitchell, Office of the Inspector General.
Excellent. All right. Thank you for joining us this evening. And I believe we have Mr. Michael Moxton coming to the table as well. We will also be joined by a few other council members soon, including Councilmember Jermaine Jones, who will join us from the Labor Committee. We are also joined this evening by our City Auditor, Josh Pash. Thanks for being here, as well as Conrad Samuels, Chief of Recruitment, Department of Human Resources, Gina Green, Chief of Human Resources, Baltimore City Rec and Park. I also see Director Moore and Deputy Director Jasiah Smith from Rec and Park. We're joined by Karen Tyler, Director of Human Resources for Baltimore City Police, and Patrick Fleming, Chief of Staff of the Department of Transportation, as well as Director Macbeth. Thanks for joining us. I will note that the Department of Finance was covered by the audit we will discuss tonight and will be represented by Director Moxton. I don't know if I'm missing anybody else. Anyone else who is joining us in an official capacity? Shemaiah Kearney from the Mayor's Office, thank you. And I believe that is all. Earlier this year, at the first meeting of the Biennial Audits Oversight Commission of the 74th City Council, we adopted recommendations for the 2025 audit program. During that meeting, I also explained that my hope, in addition to fulfilling its responsibilities to advise on planned audits, that this commission will take an active role in reviewing the findings of prior audits and the status of recommendations to strengthen the operation of city agencies and the provision of city services. Our audit office does critical work assessing the performance of agencies. This year, for example, among other audits, the audit office has issued detailed reports offering thoughtful recommendations intended to improve contract approval processes at the city's health department and strengthen control over overtime and work hours at some units within the city's Department of Rec and Park. But the auditor's work will not benefit the city if audit recommendations are not implemented in full and a timely manner. The word oversight is right there in the name of the Biennial Audits Oversight Commission, and I believe this commission needs to conduct oversight to ensure that audit reports spur corrective improvements when deficiencies are found. Tonight, we begin that effort by examining the findings of a recent audit of the city's hiring processes. Our review of this audit comes after the council met as the Committee of the Whole earlier this year to examine how the city has been budgeting for hundreds of positions that have been vacant for at least 18 months, and in some cases far longer, while annually incurring well over $100 million in overtime expenses. We cannot fill vacant positions, and we cannot reduce either the extensive overtime we're incurring or our expenditures on staffing contracts if we do not have effective hiring processes that successfully recruit the best candidates in a timely manner. Right now, our hiring process is very decentralized. The Human Resources Department implements part of the process, and then city departments implement additional steps to finish recruitment and onboard new employees. The audit before us examined the hiring process managed by the Human Resources Department and the hiring processes at several large city agencies that are included here tonight. Again, I see Rec and Park, Transportation, Finance, and Civilian Recruitment at BPD. The audit found troubling deficiencies at all of the entities I just named and offered corrective recommendations to each of them. Our employees are our city's most critical resource. Without an effective hiring process, we cannot put people to work when and where they are needed. Tonight, therefore, the Commission is meeting to understand the steps that city departments are taking to address the hiring challenges our auditor found and to build an efficient and effective hiring process that meets the needs of applicants, city agencies, and most critically, city residents. Before we get right into it, are there any other comments that committee members would like to make? Nope. We are going to approve minutes in just a minute. Thanks, Councilman Dorsey. I thank my colleague for raising this point. Our first order of business will be adoption of the minutes from our prior commission meeting. The last meeting of the Biennial Audits Commission was held on March 5th, 2025. A copy of the minutes from the March meeting was provided to each member in advance of this meeting and is also available on each member's desk. I've reviewed the minutes and believe them to be adequate, and I recommend adoption of the minutes. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes?
Mr. Chair, yes.
Councilman Dorsey?
Thank you. Item 5 kind of outlines the discussion that was had generally on the various recommendations, and item 6 notes that there was a motion to move the adoption of all items in the proposed audit plan except for the audit objective for BCFD, which I believe is correct, but I also believe that in place of the proposed objective from BCFD, we inserted the objective of auditing take-home vehicle use by BCFD. And that's not noted in here. Perhaps Josh could confirm.
Josh, where are you?
Yeah, okay.
Confirm that.
So at the meeting, there was it was left open between two different audits, and I reached out to the commission members via email, and based on the responses I got back, it was the take-home vehicles that we ended up going with.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Yes, I followed up with the commission
Is your
members.
mic on? Oh, it is. Okay.
I followed up with the commission members after the meeting because that was left open to see which one we went with. I got some feedback, and the take-home vehicles was the one that was concluded to bring into the audit plan.
Okay, so that was established, but outside of the.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was not in the meeting, but afterward.
Okay,
That's my
great.
understanding.
Thank you.
Councilman, satisfied?
Yes.
Great. Is there a motion for adoption of the minutes from the March 2025 meeting?
Move the minutes.
Is there a second? I will now ask the minutes are adopted. Do we vote? Got it. All in favor of adopting the minutes of our last meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The meeting minutes will be adopted. I'll now ask our auditor, Josh Pash, to provide a brief presentation on the audit entitled Department of Human Resources, Efficiency and Effectiveness of the Hiring Process. Josh, the floor is yours, and we will bring up your presentation right now.
Good morning, honorable commission members. My name is Josh Pash. I am the city auditor, and I'm here to present the biannual audit performance audit of human resources, which was covering the effectiveness and efficiency of the hiring process that was issued December 2nd, 2024. The audit objective and scope, the objective was to evaluate the effectiveness and efficiency of the city hiring process. The scope we looked at was 2023 and 2022. We did select people who were hired in fiscal year 2024 and then trace them back to the beginning so that we could look at the whole process from job requisition to the final offer letter sent. We looked at permanent civil service positions because DHR does not have a lot of involvement in other positions. And then we included 5 agencies: transportation, general services, police department, civilians only, rec and parks, and Department of Finance. We included other agencies in the audit because HR process for recruiting is decentralized. And so HR has their portion, and then each of the agencies has an internal HR department that takes over and deals with their portion, which I'll get into a little bit. Okay, so our finding was that Workday capabilities are not fully utilized to track and monitor the efficiency and effectiveness of the city's hiring process. We noted that the city does not have the ability to track and monitor the efficiency and effectiveness of the hiring process and to identify bottlenecks that are hindering tasks to create an efficient and effective hiring process. We did note that DHR does have policies and procedures that provide timelines for key tasks for which they are responsible. And however, there are no policies and procedures to monitor those tasks. Except for DGS, the 5 agencies we looked at, none of those 5 agencies have any formal policies or have formal policies, nor have they established time frames for the tasks that they perform in the hiring process. To differentiate, DHR has policies and procedures that set those timelines, but not procedures for monitoring. The other agencies don't have policies and procedures for either one. DGS has established its own process for monitoring key dates and identifying delays in the hiring process. We noted that they have established key performance indicators. They use an Excel spreadsheet to track and monitor their KPIs related to recruiting. Around August of 23, the DGS Office of Performance Management created a dashboard and was tracking KPIs regularly. We noted that DGS has the following KPIs: total amount of time from divisional request to onboarding, and total amount of time from receiving the certified list from DHR to onboarding. Due to the fact that the key dates are not being tracked either by the agency or in Workday, we were unable to evaluate the efficiency of the process and to identify bottlenecks, so this report is focused more on the design of the control structure. So we looked at causes. One of the causes we found was decentralization. The DHR's involvement in the hiring process is once an agency submits their requisition request for an OPR, DHR creates the requisition, they post the job, they screen the applicants to make sure they meet the minimum qualifications for the position, and they send a referral list to the agency. Agencies are responsible for their portion, which includes conducting interviews, selecting candidates, making the initial offer, if that's accepted, requesting background checks, and then making the final offer. There's no standard policies and procedures for these tasks that are done by the agencies. And standard, I mean across the city. It is the agency's responsibility to structure and manage their HR teams and to set hiring goals, including their turnaround times for their key hiring processes. We found another cause was training. Workday has built-in tools for the recruiting process. The graphic to the right shows the different stages that can be tracked in Workday. We found that not all personnel in the agencies that we spoke to were aware of these different fields that are available in Workday. And then we also noted that personnel who are aware of these are not consistently recording them and tracking them in Workday so that they could be used. We also found another cause was reports. There are reports that do exist. However, there are a lot of agency recruiters who are not familiar with those reports, and they are not familiar with the dashboards in Workday, and thus don't have the tools and understanding to use those to monitor efficiency and identify bottlenecks, and that would be if the fields and data was captured. Recommendations. So we recommend DHR, which is the citywide recommendation, to work with agencies to identify what would be helpful to them. So both DHR, the stakeholders, and the agencies have specific uses for the data here. And so to get the most out of it, the recommendation was to have a collaborative effort between the agency and DHR to figure out what would be most useful to everyone. Then is to make sure everyone is using the Workday tools consistently. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, there are different fields that can be captured by Workday, making sure that everyone is using those fields for the same purpose, and that will allow stakeholders, leadership, agencies, and DHR to look at reports and get the same information. And then, of course, to provide training to agencies. There was a lot, as I mentioned before, of people just not know what was available out there or how to utilize those tools. And then to modify the existing reports, develop new reports, and show everyone how to use them, which goes back to the first bullet of collaborating with agencies. Our second recommendation is for the agencies. Police, Rec and Parks, Department of Finance, Department of Transportation, and then is to implement policies and procedures to basically set up the timelines specific to their needs, taking into consideration what was discussed on the previous slide, and to monitor the efficiency of that hiring process, and then once issues are identified, to address those issues. I would like to thank the audit team. I would like to thank all of the agencies, DHR, Department of Transportation, Police, Rec and Parks, DGS, for all of their assistance to making this audit a possibility. And I will take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pash. Questions from the committee? I want to recognize my colleague, Councilman Jermaine Jones from the 12th District. Thank you, Councilman, for joining us this evening. We are going to proceed with a presentation from the administration unless there are any questions. I am going to, thank you, Mr. Pash. We may call you back in a little bit, hang around. But I am going to start with Deputy City Administrator Shemaiah Kearney, who will provide some brief remarks. The total presentation will be 30 minutes from the city agencies, and then we will take questions from the committee. And Paroma, if you could start the clock.
Good evening, members of the Biennial Audits Oversight Committee. I am Shemaiah Kearney, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Deputy City Administrator. In previous settings, City Administrator Leach and I have shared our collective goal of deeper engagement in audits of agency operations, as agency operations are one of our most important responsibilities. We believe in accountability and have therefore implemented several processes to help identify agency challenges and determine solutions. As you may be able to appreciate, some challenges are complex and multifaceted, and in some cases have existed longer than I've been sitting in this seat and perhaps longer than you've been sitting in yours. However, what you will hear from the respective agencies tonight is a concerted effort to address recommendations from the Department of Human Resources, efficiency and effectiveness of the hiring process audit, and a commitment to continuing to improve our human resource processes. I'd also like to take a moment of personal privilege to respond to a couple of remarks that were made in the opening, specifically around vacancies in OT, which we've had a lot of conversation about in various hearings. And we've talked considerably about the fact that most of our vacancies in our OT is really from our public safety agencies, which again, we've talked about in several settings. I also want to make sure that we're not suggesting that the use of temporary assistance is a workaround for our hiring processes. We've also had extensive conversations about hiring and some of our salary challenges. And so you've heard conversation about the salary study, about the phased approach for implementation, and there will be forthcoming conversations with the council about that and how we plan to address some of those salary challenges that may impact our ability to hire. So with that, I want to turn it over to our agencies, starting with DHR, followed by DOT, BPD, BCRP, and then DOF. DHR, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Council Chair, members of the Audit Committee. My name is Conrad Samuels, and I serve as Chief of Recruitment for the Department of Human Resources. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide DHR's corrective action updates to address the findings from the biennial performance audit for fiscal years 22 and 23. Today, I will briefly summarize the HR's section of the audit's findings and outline achievements and progress.
Yeah, you're fine. No, keep going.
Okay.
It's good.
All right.
Unless you feel more comfortable at the mic. You're fine there, though.
Okay, I'll continue. All right, here we go. All right. All right, today I will briefly summarize the HR section of the audit's findings and outline the achievements and progress of the HR's corrective actions. While the audit identified areas of opportunity, it also underscored the need for continued and enhanced collaboration with our agency partners to drive efficiency, effectiveness, and consistency. Briefly provide some context. The audit reviewed the hiring process for civil service positions across 5 key agencies, which has been shared. It also reconfirmed the hiring process as a comprehensive and collaborative effort between DHR and our agency partners. DHR, and specifically the recruitment team's roles, include approving requisitions, posting jobs, screening applicants, and sending referral lists. From there, the agencies take over the remaining steps, from scheduling and conducting interviews to extending offers and hiring talent for the city. The audit indicated opportunities for more process clarity, consistency, and training across both the HR and the agencies. A specific opportunity was identified to better utilize Workday technology, which reinforces why collaboration is critical to overall success. With regard to recommendation number 1, the audit highlighted that Workday capabilities were not being fully utilized to track and monitor the recruitment process. Data was not consistently captured, making it difficult to track performance and spot bottlenecks. In response, the HR has implemented an updated job requisition report specifically for filled vacancies. This report provides insight into the key steps of the process I mentioned earlier. The HR is also developing an enterprise-wide recruiting dashboard, which is expected to launch in October of 2025. These tools are being designed by leveraging recommendations from the audit and with input certainly from our agency partners. All right, next slide. Recommendation number 2. The audit found that Workday fields and stages were not fully understood and were applied inconsistently. To address this, DHR has mapped each step in the recruitment process, reviewed and clarified roles and responsibilities, and delivered training on standardized definitions to our agency partners to ensure consistency across departments and gives everyone a clear understanding of roles and responsibilities. This training was completed in March of 2025. However, with the recruitment process, recruitment training is ongoing. Recommendation number 3. The audit also identified opportunities for training and knowledge transfer relative to the recruitment process. Some stakeholders, specifically agency HR staff, were not familiar with how to use Workday reports or dashboards. DHR responded by updating job aids, centralizing them in SharePoint, and instituting monthly recruitment training sessions with our agency HR teams. The most recent session was held on August 27th, 2025, and this cadence will continue. The trainings are also a forum for a dialogue where agency recruiters can raise concerns, share feedback on what is working and what areas of improvement still exist. Then recommendation number 4. Lastly, the audit recommended enhancing reporting tools to identify delays and bottlenecks. DHR has implemented, again, an updated job requisition report for filled vacancies, and this has expanded tracking capabilities and showing key areas in the recruitment process steps. The information is reviewed and shared and discussed with agency partners during the previously mentioned monthly meetings, again highlighting the collaborative effort to enhance process efficiency and effectiveness. In closing, while the audit revealed areas of opportunity, it also reinforced the importance of partnership between DHR and our agencies. DHR embraces our role of providing the required tools, procedures, and support agencies for the city to effectively compete for talent. We're committed to enhancing the recruitment process together, one that is consistent, accountable, and responsive to the city's workforce needs. I want to thank the Audit Committee for your oversight and to recognize our agency partners who are alongside us in this journey, identifying, attracting, and hiring talent for the city. Thank you, and I look forward to questions.
Good evening. Patrick Fleming. For the record, I'm Patrick Fleming, Chief of Staff for Baltimore City Department of Transportation. Yep. I was like, in November of 2024, BC DOT hired our Chief of Organizational Excellence. This person is tasked with working within the agency to improve processes and procedures. And then in January of this year, our HR office convened with our Chief of Organizational Excellence to document the then process that existed for hiring and create the SOP. It was refined over the coming months, and then it was implemented in July of 2025. We've been working this new process since then, and in mid-October, we will review the process for mid-July and evaluate the success of the new SOP. We will continue to periodically look back at the process and evaluate and reiterate the SOP to refine efficiency. Now I will turn this over to Karen Tyler from Baltimore Police.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Karen Tyler. I am the Human Resource Director of Baltimore Police Department. I thank you for the opportunity here today to I thank you for the opportunity to speak on the biannual audit updates and the progress that the Baltimore Police Department has made since then. We started in August of 2024. We hired a full-time recruiter. This was going to help us be able to tackle some of the corrective actions that needed to be taken care of based on the audit. So that gave us the opportunity to prioritize our recruiting efforts and also meet the needs of the agency. We began implementing recruiting meetings to review a hiring tracker, which is currently Excel. We call it the tracker, and status updates from the team. We tackled the vacancy reports, met weekly with hiring managers, and required this tracker to be updated on a weekly basis and to provide updates to any assigned jobs and or requisitions. The team also raised awarenesses through these weekly meetings of any roadblocks, shared lessons for the team, and anything that was learned that was applicable. We then continued to develop the SOPs for the hiring process, which included job requisitions, interviewing, and onboarding. From there, we updated our new hire orientation materials in June of 2025. The assessment gathered to be able to update the materials, and that helped us as far as our onboarding process as well. We continued our business process improvement, which made assessments gathered from the hiring tracker that was required weekly, a hiring SOP. We also developed checklists, and we developed a workflow process map that has enabled the HR team to develop training materials and guidance to our stakeholders within the agency. Constant communication of our new business processes were available with and to our hiring managers. From there, we continue to evaluate our open vacancies and escalate as needed with our stakeholders, which is our hiring managers, having conversations and meetings and tackling all the vacancies and see if they were needed. If they were not needed, then do whatever was needed to be able to either freeze the pins or abolish the pins. So we were able to tackle these vacancies. How do we do this again? Going back to the hiring tracker to monitor the timeline of job requisitions created in creation to our ready to hire job postings to facilitate the business process working sessions and documenting all of our processes end-to-end workflow, therefore helping us to identify gaps or any operational processes that needed to be done. Of course, our goal was to do effective a hiring process, especially after what the audit had unveiled. We created our KPIs, included average recruiting time, average interviewing time, average background length, and average onboard time. And we continue to collaborate and hopefully optimize our workday reports with DHR as we collaborate with them to be able to share our best practices and identify opportunities to optimize workday and drive the efficiencies that the city of Baltimore is looking for from the Baltimore Police Department in our hiring processes. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Chief of Human Resources, Gina Green for Baltimore City Recreation and Parks. As a result of the audit, we committed to and we completed creating a recruitment tracker to capture time to fill. The pipeline and the matrix for the tracker mirrored the pipeline within Workday for hiring. We also committed to auditing that tracker to identify any bottlenecks within the recruitment cycle and filling positions. We completed that audit in August of 2025. That audit revealed to us that just mirroring Workday's process was not going to give us a true picture of the time to fill, because when we do time to fill in the agency, our agency, Baltimore City Recreation and Parks, we recruit a number of external people to our agency, and we do that by doing adequate salary considerations, which includes doing in-grade hires, sometimes promotion exceptions with DHR. So we found through that audit that we have to include additional things to our tracker, such as how long it takes to get a response back when we want to hire someone above the starting salary for that particular classification. So as a result of that, we'll be implementing additional fields to our tracker, and then we will be rolling out SOP out to our agency. We have a target date of that of September the 30th, 2025.
All right. Good evening. My name is Michael Moxton. I am the director of the Baltimore City Department of Finance. Mr. President, I'm momentarily stepping away metaphorically from my seat on the Biennial Audit Committee to represent the Department of Finance. With your permission, I'll stay in my physical seat.
Permission granted.
Thank you. The Department of Finance during the audit period improved our hiring significantly under the leadership of our new agency HR chief. We worked to meet the corrective actions recommended to us through the audit. We completed establishing KPIs that align with our agency's operational goals. Those KPIs included time to hire from initial job posting. Right now, it's just a little over 3 months, 107 days, but falling quickly. We are tracking the employee turnover rate. Any separation in a calendar month, it's currently at 0.8%. And we're tracking the candidate acceptance rate. It is currently at 81% for new hires and close to 100% for promotions. We're utilizing Workday functionality to track all of these KPIs. We have completed establishing key hiring criteria. Those criteria that we are tracking are time to interview from the receipt of eligible list, which is currently at 35.5 days, time to offer from from interview, which is currently at 19.7 days, and time to onboard from interview, which is at 48 days. And we've completed developing an agency recruitment tracker to monitor the hiring process for bottlenecks and to improve agency efficiency.
I think that concludes the agency presentations, and so we're ready for questions.
Thank you, and thank you for being well under 30 minutes. Much appreciated. All right. Committee members, I am going to ask that folks ask up to 2 questions at a time. I do also want to recognize Councilman Zach Blanchard, who joins us from the 11th District. Councilman, thank you for being with us this evening. I want to first just thank all the department leaders who are in attendance and who have clearly undertaken a lot of work to address the corrective actions recommended by the auditor. My key takeaways from the reports we have heard tonight are that the new data trackers are being implemented. In addition, many of the departments covered in this audit have developed and are implementing formal new policies and procedures to manage hiring. I applaud all the work and commend the seriousness with which the city, Deputy City Administrator, Administrator Leach, all the rest have moved to address the auditor's findings. Mr. Samuels, I'm going to start with you. Let's pan back to the 10,000-foot level for a minute. The auditor stated that at the time of his audit, that was when the audit was completed, the city did not have, and I quote, the ability to, 1, track and monitor the efficiency and effectiveness of the hiring processes, and 2, identify bottlenecks that are hindering tasks to be completed in an efficient manner. Do you believe that as a result of the actions you and the department here have taken, we now have an efficient and effective hiring process? And what evidence is there for this conclusion? Do you think that there is more that we need to do to achieve these basic benchmarks? And if so, what needs to be done? And what is the timeline for achieving efficiency and effectiveness in hiring?
I believe the agencies and collectively, we are on our way there to developing and having an effective and efficient hiring process. This is a work in progress. We have thousands of candidates who apply on a monthly basis, and we have a process that has 14 steps, overall steps, and some sub-steps that are in there. I believe the dashboards have been developed. I believe the work the agencies have done to track where we are in those processes. And there are 5 key steps, really: the interviewing, reference piece, the offer, background, and hiring. That's kind of the meat of where a lot of the work is done, obviously, once candidates are referred. So there's more work, I believe, that's to be done in terms of the process itself to drive effectiveness and drive efficiency. And we are looking at that holistically with identifying opportunities to update and further transform the process. With regard to a timeline, that's something I would want to follow up on, but this is work in progress.
When can you follow up with this committee on a timeline?
I would say probably a 2-week time frame, I would say.
Okay, 10 business days?
I'm sorry?
10 business days? 2 weeks would put us at September 24th.
So if I could, again.
Deputy Administrator?
Yes, if I could, one of the things that we've talked about in prior hearings or prior settings is our goal of moving towards centralization.
Yep.
That is going to take us some time to do. Now, while there are certainly interim steps agencies can take to improve the hiring process until we get to that point, I think it will be difficult to come up with effectiveness and efficiency evaluation without all of the agencies actually adhering to the same processes. So it's going to take us some time to go through some of that work. That's going to include looking at standardizing position descriptions. That's going to look at some of the work that you talked about in terms of abolishing positions or looking at vacants. That's going to include looking at some of our rules that we have for hiring and determining whether those are bottlenecks in our process. That's going to include training of employees, whether it's Workday or on some of our HR processes. So I say all that to say that I understand the questions about timeline, but I think if we want to do this right and get it to an effective and efficient process, that is going to take us some time. And I just outlined various steps that are going to have to be taken in order for us to even get there. So I wanted to make sure that I responded to that because I don't think that's a fair question for HR. Although, again, there are certainly interim steps that we can take to move towards that efficiency and effectiveness. But we first need to really start to figure out how we can best centralize our processes so that we don't have disparate processes based on agencies.
But just so I'm clear, and I appreciate that, the goal here is centralization, right? Like, is to move to a space where it would be HR that is really controlling, that is sort of the spoke or the wheel or the hub of this process, right? I mean, like,
Yes.
That is ultimately what we're seeking. And I understand we're not there. I understand different agencies are in different places in their journey of getting there, but I do want to hone in on some kind of timeline, some kind of commitment to, look, I think this has been a challenge that has been a albatross around the city for a very long time.
Longer
right?
than I've been in this city and longer than you've been in yours.
Correct. Anyone who has come through the city's hiring process, I don't say anyone, but most folks will say it was not pleasant.
Agree.
It was not responsive. Folks did not provide reasonable timelines, the communication wasn't clear or consistent. And so I am really pleased that we are undertaking this journey because, as I outlined in the beginning, I think it is one of the top causes of challenge within city government is
Agree.
ineffective, inefficient, unclear hiring processes. And I'm very happy too that we are centralizing. I know we're still seeking a permanent HR director. Mr. Samuels, I've heard nothing but good things about your work and the workflow that you've been charged with. It is extremely important that we get this one right.
Yep.
And again, I'll just briefly, anecdotally, when I did take this seat, it was very hard to hire people, and there was not a lot of support from HR, and it was a journey to get my team loaded up, and I think most council members will share a similarly tricky process, and so this is something that I know the council has been interested in for a while, and I just know that we need talent to find its way to Baltimore. If our city is truly gonna win, folks have to be able to get here and do public service, especially when they want to be here. So it's really important that we get this right. So I don't wanna, I hear you about not wanting to put Mr. Samuels on the spot, but could we articulate something of a commitment around a vision for when we're gonna get this done?
So what I would suggest is that we have a conversation, DHR and other agencies, to look at the responsiveness and how long it takes for us to get through certain phases of the process. So I think we could commit to having an update around some of the timeframes. Certainly we are impacted by the volume of applications that we get, which sometimes impacts our ability to be responsive to all the applicants. I can personally speak and say that we received probably 300 applications for a senior analyst position in the city administrator's office. The time that it takes for two very busy people to go through those resumes is not ideal. And certainly, it takes us some time to even identify or reach out to those individuals to let them know where we are in process. So I think there's certainly some work that we can do around that, around being responsive and letting people know where they are in process and figuring out the best way to leverage or utilize Workday to do that. So what I'd like to commit to is if you can give me 3 weeks to convene with agencies to talk about how we can leverage Workday. If we can identify timeframes for each phase in the process, that we would then be able to respond to you about that. Now, in terms of centralizing, that could take us years if we're being honest, right? I don't want to overcommit to that because of all of the steps that have to be taken. And so that's not ideal. We will certainly move as quickly as we can to make sure that we do centralize and we do it the right way, get people trained up and all of those things. But I don't also want to undersell how much of a yeoman's job it is going to take to centralize this many agencies and this many employees that do HR and put them all on the same processes.
Understood. Okay, so I heard 3 weeks for a report back. Is that accurate?
You heard 3 weeks for a report back on leveraging Workday to make sure that we are responsive to applicants on the various stages in the process to let them know where they are, and working with HR to make sure that we're getting our HR folks up to speed on how to best do that in Workday, because I understand that not everyone uses our HR modules in Workday as a way to respond to applicants, and that's certainly something that we can improve upon so people understand where they are in process.
That would be appreciated. Could you, I'm going to have Paroma put that as a formal committee request. Could you, within 3 weeks, just identify and let us know this happened?
Yes, can do.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to open up to committee members. I do just want to note, we're in the process of hiring someone in my office, and the sense that I have gotten is that there is some tightening up of processes within HR, and that is heartening. It creates a little more work on our side, but that's a good thing because we want our processes to all be fair, transparent, and consistent. And so I commend the work that you all have endeavored to do. It is extremely important. With that, committee members, questions? I'm going to start with Councilman Jones.
Yes. First, I just want to say I'm very glad to have an opportunity to be a part of this commission because the work that we're doing is really important. And I just want to let everyone know who testified today. I appreciate your testimony and the work you put in. So thank you. I guess my first question is for Mr. Samuels. Many of the agencies here tonight have developed key performance indicators for their recruitment processes, which is consistent with what the auditor's recommendations were. I guess my question is, what role did DHR play in helping to formulate and review the individual departments' hiring performance indicators? And how will you and the departments be using these indicators to continue to improve the hiring processes?
We have a collaborative relationship, obviously, with the agencies. We have an initiative we're working in, frankly, both members sitting to my left are a part of that work group and work streams. So we're able to partner with them, get feedback on KPIs, whether it be time, those relative to turnover, things along those lines, but we're pulling that together to, I think, work to drive updated new processes that I think will be based on not only the audit, but on feedback from our stakeholders. They'll provide insight, again, on time to fail, feedback on turnover, feedback, hiring manager feedback, which in my past experience, that's something that we leverage, and candidate feedback, because we want to know performance of how we're doing as a team. And as I mentioned before, we've got 2 members who are participating on this work group, and we have leadership commitment, which I've heard today, which is one of the most critical drivers, I think, in achieving enterprise-wide business objectives, certainly from the council side, certainly from the mayor's side, and I'm excited as someone who's relatively new with the city that I think we can continue to make improvements.
And just as a follow-up, so some of those key performance indicators were done with you all, and hopefully there's synergy between some departments a little bit. Just
it was done with collaboration.
Yeah, collaboration.
In the current work group that we have, it's 6 work streams. Okay. Those groups are encouraged to even work together, so we have input and insight across the board from everyone. About 35 total members with about 14 to 15 agencies that are participating. So we're collaborating on a daily basis and getting insight.
Wonderful. Just trying to make sure that there is synergy amongst departments when it comes to some of these key integrations. So I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you. And just wanted, second question is just as chair in the Labor Workforce Committee, just want to say I look forward to taking a broader look at the city's HR system, just because the process of hiring is so important to residents and people who are looking for a job. I think while we go to a job every day, sometimes we don't realize how much every day counts, and for the folks who are looking for opportunities, a week or 2 weeks is it means a lot to them, especially when they aren't getting a paycheck. So I look forward to, at the Workforce Committee, getting into the nuts and bolts and figuring out what we can do to improve the process, which kind of leads me to my last question. During your look and review, do you feel as though there are any other broader HR processes or systems that need to be addressed in order to improve our city's ability to recruit the best and brightest applicants?
Outside of the recruiting space, I'm not sure of any other broader issues I think that could be looked at. I say the compelling piece is what was shared before. They are residents who want to be a part of something larger than them, and that's working for the city. That is a compelling piece that drives and helps us to attract talent, and that's something that we'll continue to leverage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman, and look forward to you taking this up as well in the Labor and Workforce Committee. Erica, do you have
I do. Thank you. Thank you for everyone for the work you've done to improve the processes across city agencies, or at least the respective agencies addressed in the report. I do have a question. I think it's probably mostly to central HR or the city administrator. We talked about the action plans of the agencies who went through this process. How will HR or the city work with those agencies who are not part of this to actually implement those best practices, as well as identify for them the tracking measures that you're looking at? How will they be included in the reporting of those? Are they being asked to also track? Is that information being shared in the dashboard so that it impacts across all agencies and not just the ones that are represented here?
Yeah, appreciate the question. So certainly we're going to be looking at other city agencies that were not a part of the audit to make sure that we understand some of their HR processes. That will, of course, be part of the work as we move towards standardization or centralization, is working with agencies to identify what their processes are, the extent to which they differ from those of DHR, if they've created their own agency-specific processes, and making sure that we understand what those are. In terms of dashboards, I think there's certainly a challenge there because some agencies have a higher level of sophistication than others with regard to dashboards and metrics. As a part of some of our work with the Office of Performance and Innovation, where we are using our STAT model for some of these conversations, we are trying to identify key performance indicators that could be utilized across the enterprise so that we have a better understanding and it's not just specific to some of our larger agencies that have more employees.
And thank you. Just a second question. That you mentioned that there's a way to, at least part of the process of getting feedback from hiring managers and applicants. Has that been operationalized? How will you continue to get feedback from hiring managers and applicants or employees about their experience in the hiring process?
Right, so that has not been operationalized. As we move forward, one of the things we'll work to do is to get feedback from the hiring managers after the process has been completed. So it has not been operationalized as yet. Ideally leveraging technology to do that, where a survey, for example, is pushed to the hiring manager once the requisition is closed. That's the ideal and best way to do that. But there are different ways we can achieve that if that's not feasible.
And what about either applicants or new employees?
similar things. I would, again, in my experience, measuring time, cost, quality of hire, things along those lines, reaching out for new hires after they've started to get feedback on their experience, certainly looking at them 6 months and a year in, which can speak to quality of hire. Those are things I would say are future state in terms of getting feedback from, let's say, a 360 approach in terms of feedback of the hiring process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy. Councilman Dorsey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have some kind of like high-level concerns about the recommendations, how they're kind of oriented. Because kind of recommendation 1 is all about what central DHR should do. Recommendation 2 is all about what each individual agency should do. And I guess there's just kind of some like not looseness to the language here that for example, identify DHR, recommendation 1, we recommended the director of DHR identify DHRs and agencies' needs and wants to track and monitor their recruitment process. Doesn't sound as definitive to me as like establish like clear standards that every agency obviously needs to like uphold in order to be doing their work with a degree of excellence. Why isn't it more kind of hard-lined like that?
Okay, so number 1, as auditors to remain independent, we can't make such a detailed recommendation that we put ourselves in designing the process. So there's got to be a level of the recommendation gives a, say, like a broad approach to solving it, but doesn't give you step-by-step processes. That's one part. The other part is we don't know what all those agencies need. So we're not the subject matter experts there. And for example, some agencies, part of their tracker would be certifications or passing exams. And that'll be applicable to one group, but not the other group. So for setting those solid standards, it might not be the same for the city, other locations, for DHR, agencies, stakeholders. So part of the recommendation was come to that baseline, because I think what we've seen in other audits around the city is once you've had one party basically set the rules for everyone, then it doesn't work for everyone, and then you run into that issue. So the first step there was identify the issue. Number 2 is come up with a solution. And, you know, as Ms. Clammy said, there are other agencies involved in this that were not in the audit. So,
yeah. All right. So then let me redirect this to HR. Are there phases of hiring processes that are common between agencies, or are there elements of the hiring process that are common to like essentially all agencies, such that DHR could, should, has said, this is how long this thing should take, this is how you should track it specifically?
There are some processes that are common to the agencies and some steps that are common to the agencies. Completing interviews, obviously no particular order here, conducting a background check, things along those lines. There's some steps that are obviously common to agencies, yes.
Because I guess
or required.
We just generally describe this as like a decentralized system. We've got central HR, but the everyday, day-to-day kind of things are decentralized, and it's really unclear to me from my experience or from reading the report recommendations, like where there is like any sort of overlap, where DHR is basically saying this is how it has to be done in order to be done right, and this is the way we will track it. Because in recommendation 2, it says we recommend the police commissioner and the directors establish and implement policies and procedures to set timelines for key hiring tasks and establish key performance indicators that align with the agency's operational goals. I also think that like again, there's got to be a commonality among certain aspects, probably many aspects of the process, maybe even most of the aspects of the process for hiring most positions that could be centrally said, this is how this should be done, this is how long this should be taking, this is how we appropriately track this. Not every agency should be kind of inventing the wheel for themselves. This is how it needs to happen. To what degree is that actually the case?
I would say with the first few steps in the process, including DHR referring the candidates and for civil service positions, positions are posted for 14 days, and this is standard. Positions are reviewed within 14 days. Again, civil service positions are then referred, and then those other steps in the process I mentioned do start at that time. So with civil service positions, there are a couple things you indicated, set guidelines in terms of days or expectations that are done on the front end, and then as we move through the process with the agencies, number of candidates who've applied, number of interviews conducted, it is a bit different once you get past those initial things, such as posting and reviewing the process.
So it's basically no uniformity beyond just, we posted it and we got some people who want to work here. After that, all bets are off, and it's completely on the agencies to figure out how they run it and how quickly they respond and communicate with people. It could be weeks, it could be days, it could be months, whatever any agency decides completely independently.
I would say from what I've heard, my observation, the agencies do have some structure and rigor in terms of going from interviews, the reference, the background, the offers, and things along those lines. It probably varies in terms of the amount of time from agency to agency, but I would say there's a defined process that's there. The agencies follow. How long it takes from agency to agency, I would say that probably does vary.
Okay, but the recommendations here, sorry, I have a number of different papers in front of me. Basically, agencies are said you need to develop new SOPs to speed the hiring process and improve efficiency and effectiveness, right? And it sounds to me like this is truly just kind of being left up to every agency for themselves. It sounds like we've got 5 different people doing the same job independently of one another, instead of having DHR say, here is how you have effective standards of practice. And it feels to me like that should be a pretty centralized way of leading people down a successful path.
So you're not wrong, council member. I think that there are certainly some additional efforts that DHR can take to standardized processes across agencies, because I agree with you that there should not be a whole bunch of different processes that are agency specific. I think there's going to have to be some work that we undertake, and that's some of the work that I talked about, to make sure that there is standardization across organizations, across agencies within the enterprise, and to make sure that, again, we don't have processes that are so agency specific that there's not alignment. There's definitely some additional oversight that DHR could have with some agencies with regard to their processes. I think over time, and this is just my observation, that over time, the process has become more and more decentralized because agencies want to move more quickly. In some cases, agencies feel like they are better positioned to know what they need in terms of employees, and so have developed their own processes. And I'm not suggesting that that's the right thing to do. I just believe that that's just what's happened over time. And so in order for us to get to a point of standardization, it is going to take for HR to have more of an authoritative role in some cases to make sure that that we're adhering to standard processes across the enterprise. And there's work to do in that space. You're not wrong.
Yeah, I think it's great when agencies are like, we want to move faster than we've ever moved before. We want to move faster than, whatever. It's the moving is one thing, the measuring is the other thing. And where DHR, I think, really needs to play a central role is saying, this is how you measure success. Because I don't think it makes sense for every agency to be defining and inventing how to measure success completely independently.
Yeah, and so, in a prior remark, I mentioned that through the Office of Performance and Innovation, we're looking to figure out some standard KPIs across agencies so that we can have the same measuring stick and it doesn't differ by agency. So some of that is going to entail us talking with agencies and understanding more about their processes and identifying where there's duplicative processes that add to their times or that add bottlenecks to their process. But we should have standard KPIs across things like how long it takes for us to hire, how many days does it take for us to get to an interview process, how long do we post a position. There are some standard KPIs that we should have across the enterprise, and I would venture to say that we probably do. We just don't know it. So there's some work that we need to do as a part of that process to make sure that we are looking at all of the KPIs that all of the agencies have and figuring out which ones we can standardize as we look for more, as we work towards centralization. So I agree with you that we shouldn't have different measuring sticks by agency.
Yeah, Madam CA, I think the councilman makes a really strong point. I think my understanding of part of what it means to centralize is to move in this direction of seeking to have standardization across agencies. Is that right? I mean, I think you should not apply to the police department, not hear back for 4 days, but apply to Rec and Park, and 24 hours later, you get an email, and it's like, he's absolutely right. Like, we should be moving towards standardization. When you talked about centralization, like, is that part of what we're trying to do here?
So I think, in honesty and candor, I think that that may be challenging depending upon the position, right? So we talked about some of the requirements for some of the positions. We talked about how many applicants we may get for certain positions and the time that it takes for us to evaluate. Can we do it in 2 to 4 days? Probably not. Could we have something like 15? Maybe that's more feasible. So I think, again, that's part of the conversations that we need to have, because not every agency has like HR specific individuals. So the people who are reviewing applications, it may be DHR, maybe they have their own DHR. In the case of like the city administrator's office, it's me and the city administrator. So that is completely contingent upon the free time that we have to be able to review applications, right? So there's work that we need to do to figure out like what is the right number that is appropriate based on whatever the stage in the process is. But yes, that is one thing that we can get to, at least maybe a range, right? If it's not 6 days per agency, maybe it's 6 to 10. We can figure out a way to make that more palatable and more understandable to our applicants.
1, you should get another pin in your office. 2 people, that's too few. 2.
Y'all heard that? That's on video and recorded, right?
2, yeah. 6 days, 10. Like, I don't know what the right. I'm not here to opine about what the right number is, but I do think the councilman's point is salient, which is part of, I think, the zeitgeist of this audit is like, it is too much here, there, and kind of everywhere, and there's not much standardization. And I think some agencies, again, you're right, have more capacity to manage, but it also, we want people to work in city government who are talented and good. And so I just think, part of what I read in this report, what the councilman lifted up, is like moving toward more standard KPIs, practices, processes, whatever, I think is important. as we're trying to get better at this across the city. With that, you good, Councilman?
Yeah, I'll just say Shemaya was really helpful in getting me a response not too long ago when a constituent reached out to me and, like there's a very qualified individual who's applying for a bunch of different jobs where we need good people in multiple city agencies. And it's like months and months on. The guy hadn't got any confirmation of his applications from any of numerous agencies that he responded to. And so it, really struck a chord with me that like when I think about all of the agencies are left up to independently figure it out on their own in large part. And that's apparently not working out well for basically any of them when I hear only from, look, I hear from who I hear from, and I don't hear from who I don't hear from. But the ones that I hear from, it's always the same story. I've applied to 10 jobs and I literally got no response from any of 5 different agencies for any of these jobs. And don't you need people like me? And
well, in that situation, I'm going to correct you a little bit. There were 2 agencies that responded, but your point is taken that we should do a better job of communicating with our applicants, whether it's a yes, a no, or we're taking the position down, whatever it is. We should do a better job of being responsive, and you're right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I don't want to open this can of worms all the way open, but I'll just open it just a little crack. This does seem like we're us starting to think and utilize artificial intelligence in some ways. I mean, just as we're thinking about the types of systems to address, to your point, a lack of capacity to be doing great processes. I do think this is where we can be smart around tech and.
Yeah, and I'm happy to report that we've started some of those conversations, and I'm not going to make it seem like we are far down the path, but we've certainly identified that is one way that we could utilize AI is to figure out, how we can be responsive to applicants in some way. And so, again, not far down the path, but it is certainly something that we're talking about as we think about ways that we can better leverage AI for some of our processes.
I appreciate that. Other questions from committee members? I'm going to jump to Councilman Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. President. Looking at BPD, it's great to see all the changes that Ms. Taylor had listed. I was curious, has BPD completed all of the changes you intend to make in response to this audit, or are there additional steps that you're planning on?
We have completed all the steps. Now, of course, as we find, as we go through the processes and if things need to be changed or updated through our SOPs, we will address them and update them. So some of the processes are continuous as we do that. But yes, we're basically finished, and hopefully we're going to get a year's worth of data so then we can come back and have some of, be able to monitor and put some metrics behind some of the success that we have had at the agency.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. And speaking of data, of the results, have you seen your recruitment processes speed up, or have you seen other improvements in recruitment?
Yes, we have, with the dedicated recruiter and 3 other people to support as well. We've seen our numbers just from last year, how our hiring numbers have went up exponentially. So we're just looking forward to completing this year out and continue to tackle the vacancies. But yes, the team is doing a great job, and developing this process has really helped us, and they understand the importance of it, so and they can see their own success.
Okay. And so it sounds like the data you would have at this point for that would be preliminary?
Preliminary. We wanted at least a year's worth, and we just started implementing the tracker April. It was created December of 24, and the actual implementation and actually using it, because it took us a while to complete it and fill in all the data fields, in April. So hopefully April this year.
So we have data from May through now?
Yes,
would be the time that we?
Yes, we do. We do have data.
Okay. I'm thinking there's probably a committee request here. I'm trying to think through how to word it, but of getting a sense of the data that you have available at this time. It sounds like y'all are pretty confident, and obviously we've seen sort of the number of sworn officers are up, which was very important. But I'd be particularly curious as to how the changes in the hiring processes, like the relationship between that and like it could be that, or it could be just that more people want to be police officers now than 2 or 3 years ago or whatever, right? So, could we have some sort of like the data, the preliminary data that BPD is looking at is saying, hey, this is looking like this is moving in the right direction. Could we see that, whatever that data set is at this point?
Are you just looking for numbers, a number of hires, or the data in each one of the fields?
I'm thinking it's the hiring numbers is important, but it's also like the amount of time and the turnaround and whatnot and all those things that improve processes. Kind of going back to the earlier conversation that Councilman Dorsey and the council president were sort of alluding to, of how it's like what's being done to tighten up and speed up the processes, because obviously that's important across all of the city agencies, but certainly very important and of interest to all of our constituents for how that's working within the police department.
Okay. Yes, I can get you that. A lot of that information is in our SOPs where we have put timelines. So for each step, there's a timeline that should be met. Say if it's a contingent offer, the contingent offer should be going out within 24 to 48 hours from after the interview.
And you would be able to show like the average time for each of those steps now versus a year before the system or something?
Well, we don't have it versus a year because clearly we didn't do well on the audit.
Sure.
But we have what we're currently doing for this year as we put those parameters in places.
Okay.
Councilman, could you just articulate that committee request in 2 sentences so that council services can capture it?
I'll do my best. In the next 14 days, I am requesting that the committee receive data on the average times for each step of the hiring process from when the new system was implemented to now for the police department. Ms. Tyler, is that a sensible question?
When you say new system, are you referencing Workday? What system are you referencing?
Yeah, whatever within the hiring process. I'm sure there's like a workflow, and there's going to be X number of steps within that, and then looking at the breakdown of how much time is in each of those. The average applicant, it's spending 2 days on this intake step, and then whatever the next step is 2 weeks, and then the next step is. I assume that's the data that y'all are looking at, probably?
And it's coming so that's from April, the implementation of the tracker since April. So that's we're talking about April to now.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
And so, that would be in line with the SOPs. So.
I didn't hear you say that again.
Yeah. So, all right, I think we got it. Was that a sensible?
Director Tyler, could you just, your understanding of the councilman's request, could you repeat back again for our committee staff what you understand the request to be and whether 14 days is an acceptable time frame?
Yes, for the preliminary data, so the request is 14 days. He has asked the average times based on each of the steps that we have identified in our tracker. And basically.
That sounds right to me.
Councilman, that's...
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Tyler.
Okay.
Ms. Tyler,
just want to make sure I got that.
14 days appropriate?
Yes, for preliminary data, and that would be from April to now, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Appropriate.
Okay. I am committee requests, not my strong point. And then finally, let me ask Mr. Samuels, I know you're focused specifically on recruiting, but are there other citywide HR issues that you believe also need to be addressed to ensure we can hire and retain the workforce we need to deliver world-class services to residents? For example, are there opportunities for reform in performance management or employee retention, et cetera?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, effectively, we're talking a lot about recruiting here. What other aspects of hiring and retaining a world-class workforce are you looking at as, hey, this is a priority area that we, unrelated to recruiting, that whether it's performance management, retention, et cetera, are there other sticking points that you see as challenges that you're focused on?
Okay, there we go. I'm Tanya Brinkley, Interim Director of Human Resources. Good evening. To address that, yes, as a whole, we've been doing the employee voice survey where we've interviewed in different agencies, different environmental performance issues from throughout city government. We've also been doing performance management. We rolled that out. So we've been doing a lot to look at not just how people come in the door, but how they transition and they stay, what their environment is like, and how they retire out of the system.
And so do you have, so it sounds like you're gathering that information at this point, and there's not a clear, oh, this is an area we're doing well in, this is an area we need to put more of a focus in. You don't have a priority yet because you're still gathering those inputs?
When we did the employee voice, we did it in 3 different phases.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that for phase 1. We are finalizing that for phase 2, and we will probably have it in the next 3 to 6 months for phase 3, because we did, and we separated out the agencies that were completed. So we could probably give you for phase 1 the data, but phase 2 and 3 we're still working on.
So just for phase 1, I guess, looking at that data, where are you saying that, oh, this needs to be I know it's specific to those agencies, but this is a specific area of, if we want a world-class workforce, we need to be doing better here?
For phase 1 data, those were, trying to think of who was in that, operations, finance, HR, BSIT, those are the support agencies. And I couldn't offhand tell you what the cumulative data looks like. I could tell you that there was quite a few responses and action plan put in for those agencies, and what they were working on, I could probably get you that data.
Okay, I think we'll hold off for now. I think, as important as all those agencies, of course, are, smaller personnel-wise, so I think it'd be really interesting to see when, once the bigger agencies, once you're getting around that, I'd be really curious to see that, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
No, thank you, Councilman Blanchard. Mr. Richard, you got a question?
No questions that haven't already been asked. I appreciate hearing about the agencies, how they come together, especially, in our office. It's always great to see that city agencies can work in hand to better the city. So I just want to I appreciate everybody, the work they've done. The only recommendation that I just want to throw out there, if it hasn't been thought of, we talked a lot about KPIs and what those KPIs look like. I'm not sure if the committee has seen a sample of the KPIs. And if not, if they could be provided as well, just to get an idea of what centralization might look like down the road. And then the second part being, Workday itself. There's been challenges ever since the implementation of Workday. Rather than get to the point of, okay, we are ready to execute the centralization program, let's build Workday to work, have we started to think about what that may look like now, so that we overcome any roadblocks that Workday may exist in Workday, whether it be programming, access, whatever the case might be. Because I know that has been one of the biggest challenges over the last 4 years now since the implementation of Workday. We don't know what we don't know until we go to look for something. And then we find out either A, it's there, we just never were told, or B, it needs to be there, we don't have it, how do we get it to be implemented? So it's just a thought process, really, just a recommendation of, instead of getting to a point of saying, okay, we're ready to do something, now let's see how Workday works, consider how Workday should work, and as we go along these timelines, make sure we're hitting these benchmarks. And then the second point is, yeah, I understand it's hard to put a date on something, but I think we need to establish at least some goal line to reach. And as we get closer to that goal line, if we realize it needs to be moved a little bit, let's move it then, as opposed to not having any clarification when something is going to be done.
Well, this is not a group that takes timelines well, and then when we decide that that's not the appropriate timeline, that there's grace, which is part of the reason why I am reluctant to put out a timeline. But I understand the point. What I would just say is that, again, some of the work that we need to do to even determine standardization and centralization, we need to do that work so that then we can figure out, okay, this is the way that we would phase the work, and this is how long we think it would take. So when I said 2 years, you didn't see Council President Cohen's face, but his eyebrows went both ways. And that is me just saying if it took 2 years, right? And I don't know that it would take that long or if we could do it quicker than that. But there is work that has to be done by the city administrator's office in consultation and coordination with DHR as well as our city agencies to even figure out what are the steps to get to centralization and standardization. We're not even in a place right now where I could tell you what all of those phases are. What I shared as a part of this conversation are things that I believe are things that we have to do, but we're also planning to work with someone else, with another entity that can help us put the roadmap together for standardization and centralization. So that is what you hear is reluctance to committing to a timeline, because I don't want to undersell or oversell and then have to come before this group again to explain why we didn't meet that date. So give us the time to do the work on that so that then we can come back to you and say, this is the phased approach that we have, and these are the timelines that we think are associated with each of those phases based on our work with a third-party entity that's going to work with us on this issue. And then go from there. So that is what I'm asking, just the time to do the work to figure out what exactly we all need to do.
There's plenty of grace, Deputy City Administrator.
There is no grace in this room.
Come on.
But I appreciate that. It sounds good.
Come on. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Moxton. Great. All right. Let's see. I really appreciate, again, I want to just start by thanking Josh for really showing up. You've been really, really helpful both in this hearing, but also to my team behind the scenes in helping break some of this down for us as well. So I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing. Deputy City Administrator, the entire team, Mr. Samuels, again, appreciate. I've felt some good energy from HR over the last couple months, and I think that's partly your leadership, so I just want to acknowledge that and thank you for that. Appreciate, as Mr. Richard said, just the collaboration. It is a long way from here to there. We know, as was stated earlier, that this has been a challenge facing our city for a very, very, very long time, but it is an extremely important one for us to make progress on. And so I appreciate the level of collaboration. I actually also want to just thank Veronica, Reggie, Jasia, the heads of the agencies who came tonight. I appreciate that. And it means something when you stand and support your folks in HR. So that is noted. I also want to thank the committee members. Appreciate you all. Appreciate you standing in for the IG. Appreciate you standing in for the comptroller. And with that, unless there are any further questions from the committee, this committee will adjourn. And then we will reconvene in a few months. Thank you for joining us this evening.